Installation terminated. Collating data.
With the launch of Year 5 content, the Division 2 introduced the roguelite Descent game mode, designed to hone an agent's abilities. Now within this new mode is a talent mechanic giving players unrivaled build crafting, allowing for intense player power fantasies. As with any change to build crafting, players can start to feel a bit overwhelmed. What talent do I choose? What's best for my build? Well, over the next 10 minutes or so, I will break down all 4 talent categories and give you my best in slot recommendations to achieve your max results. Want to own at Descent? Stay tuned, as I've got you covered. Welcome back to the channel. This is LukeTheDuke, and I've been tinkering with the Descent game mode for a while now, and it occurred to me that there is no definitive guide or breakdown of all the talents you will encounter and be forced to choose from. With that in mind, here it all is, along with my personal recommendations as to which I would select and why. Of course, with any mode throwing this many talents at a player, there will be differences in opinion. Some players may love a talent, while others hate it. Play as you want to play, and use this guide as a handy reference to match to your preferences. And finally, my selections are more based on my play style of using automatic weaponry and tackling Descent solo. Therefore, I need talents and a build that can handle most anything, and my selections reflect that. You may want to go super tanky, or use a dedicated skill build, to each their own. This guide will give you the information. What you choose to do with it and how you choose to build is entirely up to you. Also, I've included a handy timestamp in the video description to allow you to easily skip around and repeat sections as needed. So, kicking this all off is the basics of Descent talent stacking. You will have 4 categories to choose from: offensive, defensive, utility, and the rarest, exotic. Now within these talent categories, you will have the following maximum number of selections to choose from: 6 offensive, 6 defensive, 6 utility, and 3 exotic talents, assuming you've upgraded your maximum talent slots at the NSA terminal. In total, that's 21 talents, which sounds like a lot for a build, but remember, it is compressing everything a normal Division 2 build would have into just this talent pool. This includes brand set and weapon talents, exotic talents, and hell, there's even a few of the OG holstered weapon talents thrown in there as well. Okay, let's begin at the top. First up is the offensive talent pool, and this is where you're going to be gaining the majority of your damage capabilities. In total, I've accounted for 19 offensive talents in the Descent game mode, and they are showing now on screen. In the near future, I'm partnering up with Sean at the Division Academy to produce some high-quality Descent infographics, much like we did when the Division 2 first launched, so watch for those coming soon. Back to the offensive talents, and here are my top 6 along with some alternatives. Unhinged is undoubtedly one of the strongest Descent talents available for that incredible upside in damage output. Plus 18% is a huge gain, and the listed negatives to stability and accuracy have always been bugged and do not seem to affect assault rifles and various other full auto weapons. However, those negative effects do apply to single fire weapons, for instance rifles, so build accordingly. Allegro is free DPS, plain and simple. More rate of fire means more rounds leaving your weapon faster and with no negative effects to weapon handling. Optimist is another strong talent as you pick up more and more weapon damage the closer your current magazine is getting to running dry. Wait for targets to stop moving before landing those last few rounds in a mag for devastating damage output. Recommendations 4, 5, and 6 are all related to critical hits because of just how strong it is. Surgical grants us 5% critical hit chance percentages for each stage we select. More crit hit chance naturally leads to more critical strikes landed. Critical will net us larger and larger critical hit damage gains the more stages we can select for our build. And finally, Obliterate will increase our weapon damage by 2% for every critical hit landed, stacking up to 30 times, and since we're seeking out Surgical for more critical hit chance, these last 3 weapon talents all work in concert together. And here's 4 alternatives that might actually work for your build. Composure is strong for players that are consistently in cover. Companion would work well for a player that stays in close proximity to skills, like a turret or drone. Vigilance, while not as strong in Descent as it is in the base game, is still a 10% gain as long as you're not taking incoming damage. And finally, if you're given the option between Precise and Concussion, I would advise to take Precise, as it is always active and grants 10% headshot damage versus Concussion, which is a timed buff and grants 10% weapon damage. Now onto the defensive category, because damage output is one thing, but staying alive and in the fight is equally important. This category is a much smaller talent pool, at just 10 talents, and so choosing 6 is a bit more straightforward. Preservation is always the first defensive talent I am looking for. Once you have stacked this talent up to max, it is beastly as long as you can keep getting kills. Adrenaline Rush will give us a bit of bonus armor for being within range of targets, which is especially helpful for those of you wanting to close the engagement ranges. Clutch requires that you be especially low on armor, and also asks that you hit critical hits in order to proc, but in a pinch, it might just keep you on your feet. Insulated is hands down a lifesaver talent. It doesn't look glamorous from the description, but with as many exploding canisters that litter the Descent arenas, this talent is super strong. The more of this talent you have stacked, the less that fire, bleed, confuse, blind, and shock conditions will affect your agents. After those first 4 recommendations, the picks become a bit more situational. I would look for Entrench for more armor repair from cover, and possibly Protected Reload for faster reloads. Though keep in mind that if you select the Bullet Hell exotic talent, Protected Reload becomes useless. Utility talents is an area that players should not avoid, as there is tremendous build value to be found in this area, and some of these talents can really add pop to your Descent builds. If you can find it early, Trauma is one of the top talents in the entire game mode. Being able to apply Blind and Bleed for hitting specific target regions gives you the ability to keep enemies at range where they are less lethal. Trauma plus Plague of the Outcast is a stellar 1-2 punch I highly recommend. Extra keeps tacking on 10% magazine capacity, and since we don't have an extended mag mod option in Descent, Extra is even better when you can rank it up to maximum value. Lucky Shot not only gives us another 10% magazine capacity, it also grants us a 10% chance to refund any missed rounds back to our current magazine. After my first 3 talent recommendations, the selections become a bit more wide open. Weapon handling is an all-in-one description, including stability, accuracy, reload speed, and weapon swap speed. Both braced and optimized give us percentages of these stats, and at higher levels, your weapons turn into absolute laser beams. Fast Hands adds reload speed bonuses for achieving critical hits. It's not my favorite utility talent, especially when I discuss the exotic talents, but it still adds value at lower levels. And finally, Surge. I personally push for more damage and sustain, but adding 10% or more skill haste to any build means getting your skills back that little bit faster. If you were going for a full skill build setup, Surge should be near the top of your list of utility talents to use. And we've arrived at the exotic talents, and some of these you are used to from the base game, while others have been elevated from standard gear talents to exotics for the Descent game mode. In total, I have counted 10 exotic talents, and of these, you will only be allowed to pick 3, and these do not stack. If available, I would always advise taking Plague of the Outcast, as it's just so damn good. Being able to apply a massive weapon damage debuff to targets that stacks never gets old, and you'll especially like Plague when you land a few shots and a target hides behind cover, only to die from the constant damage ticks that you've applied. Once you hit targets like bosses with a large amount of ticks, they simply melt like butter in a microwave. Bullet Hell works better in practice than it looks on paper. In fact, the most common deaths in Descent is when you were simply rushed and overwhelmed, like when you're trying to squeeze in a reload, and Bullet Hell takes all that misery out of the equation. You never reload. Full stop. Just take into account any talents you have equipped that factor into damage for mag percentages, as Bullet Hell will take all of that out of the picture. My third recommendation is a bit of an outlier, but I like Dr. Home for even more armor repair. Remember, I play solo, so there is no backup if I go down, and Dr. Home gives me a bit more cushion. You could actually get the same effects from Bloodsucker, although I haven't personally received it yet in my Descent playthroughs as part of the exotic selections. Overall, there's not a lot of bad selections in the exotic talent category, although I would personally steer clear of Sandman, Glass Cannon, as that's just way too much incoming amp damage, and finally Incessant Chatter, as it applies to reloads, and I love Bullet Hell on my builds. And there's my best in slot recommendations for the Descent game mode. Now, as I said, these are my recommendations based on my personal playstyle and, of course, running solo. But hopefully you found it informative. And once those infographics are ready, I will post to my Discord and Twitter for all to use. If you happen to like the video, consider hitting subscribe to receive my latest Division uploads, and while you're at it, ring the notifications bell to receive my latest upload alert. If you could rate and or share this video, it would be greatly appreciated. Remember, you can find and follow me on Twitch, Twitter, and in my open community Discord server, links to all of which can be found in the video description and pinned comments below. Shout out to the over 123,000 of you that have taken the leap and hit subscribe, and as always, a special thanks goes out to my patrons on Patreon. Until the next one, this is LtBuzzLitebeer, signing off.